Hi everyone, my name is Laskewitz, and in this video I'm gonna tell you a lot more about Power Automate Desktop. Earlier this week I released a video about Power Automate Desktop and I showed you how you can install Power Automate Desktop and how you can start working on your first process through Power Automate Desktop. In this video I'm gonna show you a lot more. I'm gonna show you how you can save your process to the cloud, and that's actually really easy. There's also another thing I want to show you, and that's inputs and outputs. So how can you define inputs that are going into your process, and how can you define outputs that go out of your process? If you can remember, with Win Automation, I already showed you how you can do inputs and outputs, but this goes a lot easier in Power Automate Desktop. So I want to show you that as well. And the last thing I'm going to show today in this video is actually how to work with failed runs. So whenever a process fails and you use unattended, for instance, you might want to see more easily what went wrong. So you don't want to have to log in on the machine. You don't want to have to debug what actually is going wrong. You probably want to see that as soon as possible. And with Power Automate Desktop, it makes sure that the failed runs get synced to the cloud. So whenever something fails, for instance, a screenshot would get uploaded to the Power Automate portal. And from there, you can see the runs and where it went wrong. You can see the screenshot of the machine, for instance. So there's a lot of cool stuff happening there as well. But for now, let's just move to my desktop and show you how we can work with Cloud Save. Okay, so here we are on my desktop, and you can see that I'm in the Power Automate portal and I'm in the community environment that I have available here. You can see that I have two UI flows available in the UI flows tab. There's one of the type Power Automate Desktop and one is of the type Win32. The Power Automate Desktop one I'm going to show you a little bit later, and the Win32 UI flow is available here, and that's one I recorded a lot earlier. That is still created with the old package, so that was with the UI flows package that you could download a lot earlier. So this is an old UI flow, as you can see. When I switch to Power Automate Desktop, you can see that I only see the RPA challenge input forms in the same environment where I am logged in. So you won't see the old UI flows, you only see the new ones. But the cool thing about this, and this is one of the first things I wanted to show you, when you select new flow and you will enter a flow name. So let's call this test Power Automate Desktop. And let's create this one. When I create it, it already opens it in edit mode, of course. I don't have any actions yet, but I can already save it. And it says, well, flow test Power Automate Desktop has been saved successfully. So when I close this one down, you can see that it is in here in the overview, but it immediately also saves it in the Power Automate portal. So when I would refresh this, you can see that it's already in here as well. So what I've just showed you is something completely different from Win Automation. When we used to use Win Automation, you would create a process and you would save it locally on your machine. Now with Power Automate Desktop, you can create it locally on your machine, but you can save it to the cloud. And by saving it to the cloud, you get all kinds of features available that are already available in powerautomate.com. An example of that is, for instance, solutions. So whenever you would save your process, you can now add it to a solution. You can add another automated flow if you want to. You can add connection references to make it easier to move it to another environment as well. And then if you have that solution, you can just export it. You can go to another environment, import the same solution, and then it just works. And that's something that's really, really important, especially if you want to have a professional development environment. So I think this is a huge step for Power Automate Desktop, and it's a huge step forward. So Cloud Save, I think this is a really nice thing, and I hope you do too. Let's talk now about inputs and outputs. In my earlier videos about Win Automation, I already showed you inputs and outputs, and inputs and outputs were always a little bit shaky. So it took a little bit of hacking to actually get all the inputs into Win Automation, and it took another flow, an automated flow, to get all the stuff out of there. Or you need to, for instance, create a text file to put some outputs into that text file and sync it to maybe SharePoint to get it from there. And those weren't ideal. But within Power Automate Desktop, you now have inputs and outputs available in the client, and that's something that's really nice. So I'm going to show you that next. So let's move to my desktop and show you how that's been done. Okay, here we are on my desktop, and you can see that I have my Test Power Automate Desktop process and my RPA challenge input forms process. And I'm going to edit the last one. So let's open it up and see when it loads. Here we are. And you can see all the actions in here. It has a subflow called submit form. And I don't know if you saw my earlier video, but this is a process that can easily do an RPA challenge, and that's from the website rpachallenge.com. So let me open that up to show you. And this is the challenge that we're gonna do. It's the input forms challenge, and what this does is you can download an Excel file, which I already have on my desktop. So there is a file available called challenge, and when I open that up, you can see that there is a couple of rows in here. So you can see that there's a first row with the headers, and after that you can see a couple of rows that have a first name, last name, company name, role in company, address, email, and phone number. And what the challenge is here is that you have to click start with your RPA process. You have to go to first name, you have to fill it in, last name, etc., all the fields. And then when you are done with the first row, you have to click submit, and then the whole form changes. So no first name or no column is at the same place as it used to be. So it's really hard to get the first name and last name, for instance, at the same row. And when you click submit again after the next row, it changes around again and again and again. So you can see that it changes around a lot. And that's the hard part about this challenge. And in my other video, I show you exactly how you do that. So make sure to go to that video if you want to see how I did it. For now, I'm just gonna run this flow to make sure that you know what's happening. But before I run this process, I need to close down some things. I need to close down the Excel I just showed you, and I need to close down the Power Automate website. And why is that? It's because I assume with my process that none of that is open. So I assume Excel is not opened, and I assume that Edge is not opened on the machine I'm using here. One other thing, I need to disable the close web browser action. I'm gonna enable that a little bit later, but for now I want to show you what the end result of that website is, so that I can show you what I need from there as a output variable. So let's just run this and I'll show you what we need from that website in a little bit. So here we hit run. It's gonna open Excel. So you can see that at the bottom, it's already closed now. It got all the data and it's filling all the data in the Edge browser. So it goes through it one by one. And this takes a little while, but we have 10 rounds to do, and we're now at round 7. So it's adding all the data, the first name, last name, etc. And we're almost there. So here is the last one. And when you submitted the last one, it will show you a screen with congratulations. Your success rate is 100%, 70 out of 70 fields in 24,371 milliseconds. So that's 24 seconds. It's not that fast, but I'm going to show you in a bit how you can speed that up a lot. So what I want, and I already prepared that in my process, is I want this message, so congratulations, as the result. And I want to have your success rate is blah, blah, blah. I want that as my message. So what I've done is I enabled some UI properties, and that's the text result and the text message. Those UI elements I got from the website rpachallenge.com. So let's see. Oh, I can see it here, but you can see a little screenshot here. So congratulations. That's the part I wanted for the result. And for the message, you can see it here. This is the message that I wanted. So those UI elements I have, and I have step 18 and 19 to get those texts from the website. So it's selecting the UI element and it's putting it in a variable called result, the first one, and the second one is added to a variable called result message. And those variables are in my variable pane. So I have result here. And when I edit this, you can see that I have result here, result. That's the result of the UI flow. And it already says congratulations because I ran it, and that was the result of that. And the result message is your success rate is 100%, blah, blah, blah. And that got in here as well. So when you want to add output variables, you can just click the plus and click output. And you can select output var, for instance, and use that as a variable name and an external name. And let's add a description, for instance, and click create. So it's that easy to create a new variable. And if I want to get the element on the web page and put it in a different variable, I can just change the result message in here to output var, for instance. And this would change everything from the result message to output var in here. But for now, I'm going to use the result message here because that makes a lot more sense. So I'm going to delete the output var again. What's also really fun about these variables is that you can easily get the usages. So you can just select the dot 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 at the side and click find usages, and then you will immediately see that in the main subflow there is at line 18 an action called get attribute own text of UI element text result on web page, and that's the place where it has been used. So you can easily find it back. But for now, let's just enable the action again, the close web browser, and I want to add an input variable. I'm not going to do anything with that input variable for now, but let's just show you how that works. So the variable type is input. The variable name can be input test, for instance. The default value I'm not going to enter. The data type currently only has one type, so it only has string. And the external name, I'm going to use the same input test in here, and I'm going to add a description here because it's required. So let's click create, and this is how you can get an input in here as well. Let me just change this around because I wanted to use the username from the person that's gonna trigger the flow. So let's add that username of the person triggering the UI flow. So let's update this one, and I'm not going to use it in the in this Power Automate desktop flow. I could actually do something really easy, so let me just do that here, and I can, for instance, display a message at the end, and I can say username as a title and message to display. I'm going to use the username variable. I'm not going to use anything else than this. Close message box automatically after 3. Let's keep it like that. Okay, so I'm gonna save this one and keep this like it is. Here we are, it's already saved. So I'm gonna close this down. I'm gonna go back to Power Automate, and for now I'm going to my flows. I'm gonna add a new flow called an instant flow. I'm gonna manually trigger a flow because that's the easiest for me. I'm gonna call this one button RPA challenge. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm just gonna start this flow with the manually trigger a flow trigger, and I'm gonna run a flow built by Power Automate Desktop after that. And when I select this, I can select my UI flow. You can see for now that the UI flow is not selected and the run mode is not selected, but whenever I select the RPA challenge input forms UI flow, it would immediately get the username in here as an input. It automatically finds that out from the definition. So when I want to add the username, I can hit the FX button here. I can select username, and currently there is something where it would get the encoded username, but for now I'm gonna use the normal username in here. And I'm gonna add another step, and I'm gonna use a compose here because I also want to show you the outputs of the flow that we just built. So we're gonna use the FX symbol here again, and I'm gonna hit the result. I'm gonna put a space and a dash between it, and I'm gonna add the result message, and that's it. So I'm gonna save this one. So everything looks good. I'm gonna hit the run button. I'm gonna continue, and I'm gonna run the flow. So here we go. It's gonna run the flow. It's gonna show the Excel in a little bit. So normally it would take a couple of seconds and then it would start Excel. It already did. It's actually starting the RPA challenge, but it didn't work really well because normally it would start by now. But this kind of makes it easy for me for a little bit later. So let's just close this one down, go back to the other part. This is gonna fail for now. So here it is, and I'm gonna use the same thing for a little bit later. Let's run this one, and I'm gonna click run flow, and I'm gonna close the browser down. So now it would start the flow again. And the thing that just happened is I assumed, like I already said before, I assumed that the browser was going to be empty, or the browser wouldn't be opened. And of course, because I ran the flow from there, it was already opened, and it doesn't really work well with multiple open edge windows. So that's why I closed that one down really fast. So let's now open it up again, and we can see at my flows the runs. So we had the failed one we just had, and now we have the succeeded one as well. And when I open this one up, you can see that the input was username, and that was actually pretty good. I actually didn't see the message box, so let me just see that as well. So open this up again. Hopefully I saved it, because the message box really didn't wait 3 seconds for. Maybe it's yeah, let's just add the option keep message box always on top, and let's see if we can do it the same way now. So let's go and run this one more time, and I'm gonna resubmit the old one, and I'm gonna close immediately. So now it will start Excel again. In the bottom you will see the little icon of Excel in the taskbar. Yeah, here we are. So it's running, it's opening up Edge, it's gonna put all the data in there. It's going way faster than in the other way around. And here it shows the message box as well, and it closes it down. So it only took 3 seconds before it closed down again, but it worked like a charm. So my bad for not opening up the option to keep it on top as well. And yeah, these were some examples of inputs and outputs in Power Automate with Power Automate Desktop. But I also wanted you to show the failed runs, and that's something that's also really interesting. So the failed runs, normally they would look like this. So you would have manually trigger a flow, and you can see it like this. But there is a lot more possible, and I'm actually interested because I didn't hit this see run details before. So let's click on that. And yeah, this is exactly what I wanted to show you. But normally I always went to my flows, UI flows, and then I would select the UI flow in here, and you can also select it from here. So this is the different way you can do that, but it's also possible from the automated flow to go to the run details from here. So that's a nice trick you can do. And when you do that, you can see flow run failed. You can see all the different actions that are available and that have been succeeded beforehand. And you can also see that at the launch new edge that it went wrong over there. And that was because there was an internal error or communication failure. And that's something I've seen a couple of times already. And I believe that's because the extension can't get communication with the Power Automate desktop. And I believe that's some of the issues that still need to be fixed. But the nice thing about this is that you can easily see where it went wrong in the flow run. And you don't have any message like the UI flow run failed. That's it. You have really detailed flow run information in here. And what's also really interesting is that you also get an error context, and that's something that you can see on the side here. And when I click on this little thumbnail, I can also see what actually happened on the screen when it failed. And this was actually the screen when I closed down the browser, or sorry, I had the browser still open, but it actually was the screen for me at the moment of the error. So this way you can easily see more stuff about what's actually going wrong. In this case, it wasn't really helpful, but sometimes you can see a screenshot of maybe an update happening on the machine or something like that is ruining it for you, for instance. And that's something that's really helpful from the Power Automate portal, so that you don't have to to actually log into the machine to debug it there. You can easily find the error already from here. So that's something that's really nice. So with that, I want to end this video. We've seen a couple of really cool things. Cloud save was one of them. We talked about input and output variables in Power Automate Desktop, and we also talked about failed runs in the Power Automate Desktop UI flows that you can use and how you can debug those issues. So it was a really big packed video, and that's why it was also a little bit longer than you're used to. But I really wanted to show you these capabilities as well. And in the next video that's coming up, I'm going to show you how to export a project and how to import that in another environment, how you can prepare those packages. So I hope to see you at the next video as well. And yeah, thanks a lot for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I hope to see you soon. Bye bye.